Yo, this is SoulJohn86 bringing you another video. Today I'm just gonna really just be talking wrestling, man. There's a point to this video, there is a focus, but just wanted to talk about wrestling, man. Wrestling video games, all of it. Um, Really starting with 2K, since 2K is what you see on the screen right now. I've been playing more of the My Rise, and My Rise still has the same issues that I brought up before. But um, the good parts to My Rise, like when you see the cutscenes, when you see, promos or um, there's a section in My Rise for those of you who have completed it. I'm still not done with it, but there's a section in the My Rise storyline where um, you're getting the War Games teams together, and when SmackDown invades Raw, and Cody successfully retains his world championship title, and then it becomes like a face off in the ring of the Team Raw and Team SmackDown, and William Regal gets punched out by your character, and just it feels like a segment that you would see on WWE TV. It's the moments like that. Even when you're in the War Games match, when Cody is the one to enter the ring last, all you have to do is give him I think it's either a light attack or a heavy attack, but make sure it's like close to the center of the ring. So all you have to do is just, hit X or hit square. And then it turns into a cutscene of you and Cody going at it in the War Games match. And Cody ends up winning you. Um, and did I say Cody ends up winning you? Cody ends up winning. And it felt like something that you would see on WWE TV. And it's those moments that are the enjoyable parts to My Rise. I guess what I'm trying to say is My Rise, like I said in the last video that I put up about it, um, My Rise isn't all bad. So I guess I will have to give 2K a little bit of kudos on that. Um, there are parts to this game where they really do seem like they are, paying attention to what goes on WWE TV, and it's nice. Regardless, honestly, it's regardless of how I feel about the current product of wrestling. Seeing it played out in a video game, it helps. My Rise is actually giving me another reason to play 2K because, again, like I said, when I'm done with playing any other kind of game that I have, which can sometimes be fairly quick, the games that I play, I don't choose to really play a lot of games that are like 50 hours long. I just, it's not my cup of tea. So I'm not someone who puts hours and hours into like other like games like RPGs and stuff like that. Like, no, my style is more of a Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. That game was like what, 10 or 11 hours to complete, but if you wanted to 100% complete it, it was like 25 hours. Of course I just beat it in like 10 or 11 hours tops. uh Evil West was a game that came out a few years ago. Those type of games, just real simplistic, really high, fast-paced, arcade action. I love games like that. I always have since I was a kid. When I think of video games, I think of not necessarily button mashers because yes, you can. Yes, some games I do play some games that are button mashers, but for the most part, I'm mainly talking about just, how Ratchet and Clank is. You're kind of just holding down the trigger and you're aiming, and then you're dodging and running. It's just a very fast paced game, and same thing with games like Evil West. RoboCop was a action high fast paced first person shooter, and it was nice to play. I like playing fighting games. Let's see what else. I'm trying to think of like the games that I have in my collection, but typically I don't really like playing games that are going to have me playing forever. The only game that I beat that took 30 hours, about 30 hours. And that's because I didn't do everything in the game. I just kind of stayed focused on the main parts of the story. Was the Final Fantasy VII Remake, the first one. I didn't even play Rebirth. I just played the first one. And the only reason why I was able to get through that because it was in 2020 when that game came out. And you know what happened in 2020? We had the time to play those type of games. There was nothing else that you could do for a little bit in that year. So like I always say, like I tell my wife, I would have never completed this game if things were normal, right? In that year, I would have never completed Final Fantasy VII because it was a game that just it asks a lot of your time. And but anyways, I know I'm going off and on the tangent, but um when I play these other games and I'm done with them, like I said before, I always go back to wrestling and or NBA 2K. NBA, the basketball franchises and WWE franchises have always been the games that I play the most. And even back then when I played NFL 2K a lot and Madden all the time, I did play those games, but really only for a little bit. Like I would play NCAA had the luxury of coming out in the summertime. So like early July, you would pick up NCAA and I would play NCAA football all the way until Madden came out in August. And so I would play Madden until NBA 2K would come out. And back then, if you guys remember, NBA 2K never came out as early as it does now. It comes out like the first week of September now, but they used to actually have basketball games come out closer to when the NBA season started. NBA 2K used to come out when the preseason of the NBA started. Then it started going like, then it started coming out when it was the opening week of the NBA season. It wasn't until like gosh, 2K14 or 2K15, they started making the release date be earlier and earlier and earlier. It went from like late September to mid September to now the game comes out early September. But, anyways, what I'm trying to say is after I was playing the football games, when NBA 2K came out, it was NBA 2K. And I would play NBA 2K, I would play the longest. But right next to NBA 2K, it was always the wrestling game that was out. And this kind of explains my my love-hate relationship with WWE 2K. It's I have all of these complaints. These complaints haven't changed. But the thing is it's a wrestling game and it's WWE. It's something that I grew up with and it's really never changed. You know what I mean? Like, number one, I'm a wrestling fan. And number two, I'm a huge WWE guy. I've always been. The only time I ever watched WCW was when NWO started, when Kevin Nash and Scott Hall invaded in Nitro. That was really when I first started paying real attention to WCW. But I was a WWE guy through and through. And even though I was a WWE guy, I did play. I loved WCW versus NWO Revenge. Played the hell out of that game. WCW versus NWO World Tour. All of that. I played the hell out of those games. But those two games specifically. I even played the crappy PlayStation 1 Nitro and Thunder game. But it's always been about wrestling games for me, right? That's my it's just been my favorite type of game. You know, I don't necessarily have a favorite genre in video games because I play sports games and I love fighting games and I even like racing games occasionally. I don't know. I just know that my favorite type of game has always been to play wrestling games. And so when I find these new ways to uh, play WWE 2K, it all just harkens back to my viewpoint of wrestling and wrestling video games in general. So it's the reason why I always come back. So for anybody who always wonders like why people like me continue to play WWE 2K, even though we have all these issues, we get upset about the game. And mind you, when we get upset about the game, it is a lot of it is just it's not that serious. It's not meant to be taken seriously, but when you have passion about something, it comes across like it's life or death. It's just a video game franchise. It's not a big deal. You know what I mean? But it's just one of those things where people like me and people like a lot of you guys who agree with me when you watch these videos, we just want to see the game get better because we see the potential in it. We want them to listen to the fans. We want them to listen to what fans don't like. What's boring in this game? What can be taken out of My Rise? You can keep My Rise, right? The only reason why people even say give us season mode or give us Road to WrestleMania is because there's things in My Rise that are just tedious and boring, while Road to WrestleMania and those other, like season modes for the older games, they were fun. You didn't get bored playing. And I think to myself, like I put in that, like I said in the last video, excuse me, just imagine if My Rise was just all the cutscenes and then the matches in between. Not the stuff where you're in the back and you're having to talk to people and that dialogue where their mouth really isn't, I think their mouth is moving, but you're just kind of standing in front of them. You don't see your character, but you hear him say his dialogue back. Like, and you have to keep pressing X to let the dialogue continue. You have to check your cell phone and all of that stuff. You take that part out of My Rise isn't a bad mode. And after my last video, when I said there's not enough PLEs, I still don't think there's enough PLEs that you participate in, especially being the champ in the storyline for this one. However, I feel like I have already done more PLEs than that stupid lock storyline from the last game. You barely did any PLEs in that version of My Rise, which was very, very weird. But I have already done a good amount of PLEs, actually. I kind of felt like I ate my words a little bit on that last video. It's still not enough because you did more PLEs in SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. You did more PLEs in SmackDown versus Raw. SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, you did more PLEs because you did in those games with the season mode, you did all of the PLEs. So it was nice. And then sometimes there would be storylines in those games where your character would be out and you would miss a lot of weeks, which was cool. Which I wouldn't mind that being a part of a storyline for My Rise. I don't know. This video, I guess, I'm just going through a lot of my thoughts that I wanted to just kind of like say out to you guys, man, because um, I've been enjoying, oddly enough, the parts of My Rise that I do enjoy, I enjoy. That make you know what I mean? Like the parts of it's actually making me want to complete the story. It's just a drag. The other stuff that's a part of the mode is just a real drag, and it sucks. But there's a lot of things that I wish that were in My Rise that I wish that they could put in universe mode. Yeah, there's a lot of cutscenes that happen that I wish was a part of, building your own universe and things of that nature. But it also made me realize how much, and I've talked about it before, it made me realize how much I do love single player storyline modes in wrestling games, because it is nice to focus on one wrestler and go through a storyline. It's refreshing. It feels good. I think part of the reason why I personally criticize universe mode so much is because already universe mode was never a mode that I liked as much as everybody else. It's always felt boring. The only time that it didn't feel boring was when the story mode was spontaneous. And yes, you controlled a lot of stuff with universe mode, but the story itself, you just kind of watched it play out and you were surprised. Every cutscene you saw was a surprise. And I'm talking like back in WWE 12 and like WWE 13, like those years when universe mode was, you just set everything up, play it, and then boom, you're in a storyline that is going to forever change throughout the weeks, just like you're watching TV. But now, since we control everything, a part of the problem with universe mode for me is, okay, I'm setting all of this up. I'm getting my roster ready. I'm getting my titles ready. I'm getting my shows ready. I'm getting, whether I'm doing a current or 80s or 90s or Attitude Era, I'm getting all of this stuff ready. I'm downloading all of these superstars from Community Creations. It's taken me hours, and not hours in one sitting, but just hours maybe in total of me playing the game. I get everything set up, and now it's time to actually play. And the fun part runs out, because then you run into the dilemma of, well, man, I set all of this stuff up and I'm a player. I don't like watching the outcomes. I don't like watching CPU versus CPU. I'm a player. So I'm like, well, do I want to play every match? Because I did do a universe mode where I played every match. It got boring fast. It did not last long. Gosh, what 2K was it when I did that? It was either 2K, I think it was like 2K18 and 2K19. Um, and I think that was the last time that I was playing all of the matches. Like literally every match on Raw, I played. Every every match on there was one year where I actually chose to do every match on every event that I had, and man, that just got so ooh. And then I started doing a thing where when I did create universe modes, and this is recently, I would play key matches. Um, and then I went to, choosing a superstar to go through. And then they added superstar mode. But the problem with superstar mode is they make you wrestle every week. You can't simulate the matches. They don't change it up. Cause honestly, superstar mode could be the mode that they change into sort of a season mode, where season mode plays out like something from SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. I think that would do way better for that would play out way better than what they have now, where you're just doing match after match after match after match. It just that gets boring. Um, but yeah, man, that's pretty much it when it comes to 2K. Now, for wrestling in general, man, you know, I bring up basketball a lot on my channel because basketball and wrestling have always been my favorite things to watch. I'm a football fan. It took me a while when I was a kid to become a football fan because it was slower paced. There was a lot of breaks in between plays that I didn't at the time understand. So I really didn't start liking football until I was in the third grade. And the reason why the Dallas Cowboys are my favorite team was because the day that I started to like football, they were playing. And they made everything look exciting, right? I'm seeing Michael Irvin go off. Troy Aikman was going off. Saw Emmitt Smith do crazy numbers running the ball. And from that point on, it was like Dallas was my team. And so I started to like football. Football has changed a lot, but it's still fun to watch. Like fundamentally, it's still pretty fun to watch. Um, However, I can really only watch Dallas play, and when Dallas doesn't have a good year, just like this year, I don't really watch much football because I can't watch everybody like I used to. There was a point in time where, like when Chad Ochocinco and T.O. and those guys were playing, Steve Smith, when all of those guys were playing, I could watch multiple NFL teams every week. And then it slowly went to like, okay, now I'm only going to really pay attention to Dallas and just kind of keep my it just kind of keep up with what's going on around the league. However, with basketball, man, basketball was like Christmas. Like with like the start of basketball season was like Christmas, man. And this started with me, back in elementary. I liked I can say I liked basketball when I was in the first grade, dude. Like I honestly can say that. Like basketball, I mean, there's pictures of me as a kid dunking on a little Tykes hoop, trying to imitate Michael Jordan. Um, Basketball has always been my sport. I remember at school, in elementary school, we had what was called, what was it called? I was about to say the thing that's for like middle school and high school, but there was a different name that our elementary school used. But when it was spring, we had this event that we did where it was a Friday, and after school, everybody would go home. Teachers and the principal, everybody would set the rooms up like it was a carnival. So every classroom had all of these different, I kid you not, they built it up like it was a carnival. And you needed to they gave you like tickets in class to use, and they had all of these games that you could do to win prizes and stuffed animals and things like that. And I remember winning a dunk contest because they had a little Tykes basketball hoop set up. I think in the it wasn't even in a gym. A teacher kind of cleared out the room with all of the tables and chairs, and I remember all the parents watching, and there was a dunk contest, and I actually won it because I was doing my best impersonation of what I saw on TV. But I loved basketball, man. I loved how every team looked different. I loved how the game was more physical. The game, there was resistance because there was defense. I mean, you guys know the story. I don't want to regurgitate everything, but I used to love it. I loved basketball pretty much up until when LeBron went to LA. And not saying that this caused my dislike for the NBA, but it just so happened that when LeBron went to the Lakers, I just started noticing things change a lot in basketball. And to the point where I now don't watch it anymore. And it went from being my favorite sport to something that I can't even sit and watch anymore, not even highlights. I still watch videos on the NBA, but it's mainly videos of people talking to how I'm talking now. Um, and I'll kind of keep up with what's going on, but it's not the same. Uh, I'm sorry about my voice again. I like doing these videos early in the morning. I gave myself about an hour before recording, but my voice still sounds like I just got up. Um, but the reason why I say all of that, right? And I know this video is going to be long. The reason why I say all of that is um, I'm really getting there with WWE. And I've already stopped watching AEW. AEW is hard to watch. Uh, and honestly, for anything, it's hard to watch because the crowd isn't the same anymore. So when you turn to a wrestling show and you hear how either empty or small the venue is, and people are barely loud, um, it kind of is boring. So I stopped watching, along with other things too. It just doesn't have the magic that it had when it first started. Uh, but these changes to wrestling that I talk about on my channel all the time, it's starting to take a toll on me where I'm just thinking like, why am I even watching this? Even though I don't even, the funny thing is I only watch the PLEs, and I only watch the clips of the shows. And even the clips of the shows are hard to get through. Like that's what's interesting is no matter how long a clip on YouTube of SmackDown or Raw is, it's hard for me to get through. It's honestly hard for me to watch matches. A lot of matches that people will give 5 star, I look at it and I say, because I'm very critical of wrestling, I'll say, well, what was the story that was told? Okay, yeah, they both guys or both women did a bunch of cool shit. But what was the story? I watched the highlight to Mr. Perfect versus Brutus the Barber Beefcake. And I can't remember if it was at a WrestleMania. I can't remember what pay-per-view it was. But wrestling, Back when we were kids, I don't think we realized how much sense wrestling made. Like the logical part of wrestling, I don't think we realized until now how much sense it made. Like certain finishes, um, the variations that I talk about a lot, match variation is a lost art. Everybody's doing the same thing, match after match after match. And people are kicking out of things that they shouldn't kick out of. Like today's wrestling, they don't know how to end a match because typically a match almost 90% of the time now, it has to be your finisher that you win. It has to be, you know, um, I don't know. I don't know. It's you have to find a balance. There was a moment in time in wrestling where everybody was winning with a roll up. Um, but and that wasn't good either. But you got to have a balance with wrestling. So one of the things that I noticed when I was watching this Mr. Perfect Brutus the Barber Beefcake highlight, it was like the last like several minutes of the match, and the finish was perfect. So Mr. Perfect has Beefcake on the ground. He's getting ready to do a maneuver to him. Beefcake reverses it, takes Mr. Perfect's legs, gets him on the ground, and then he slingshots him into the turnbuckle post. So instead of just slingshotting him and Kurt hitting Mr. Perfect, instead of him having his head hit the top turnbuckle, he jumped high enough to hit his head on the ring post. And he fell back. Beefcake pinned him. 1, 2, 3. And you even hear the commentator say, I think he knocked himself out. I want to say it was Jesse the Body Ventura and Gorilla Monsoon maybe doing the commentary. And you hear them both say, I think he knocked himself out. You know, he's like, oh, Mr. Perfect hit the ring post. I think he knocked himself out. He's like on the ground and not kicking out from it. Just 1, 2, 3, match is over. And I was like, man, that finish was amazing. And now you fast forward to today, you got guys doing tombstone power drivers onto steel steps. And a person kicking out at 2 after that. You have some of the craziest moves that are done to an individual and they get right back up. Wrestling is a work, but the beauty about wrestling was to make it logical, to make the fans feel like everything that was happening was legit. So when you do these big spots that are like crazy, instead of saving that for the last spot to end the match, they do these crazy spots throughout. But there's no indicator that this character is going to be able to withstand that. I mean, look at Adam Cole. Look how little Adam Cole is. And I'm not trying to body shame, but look how small Adam Cole is. He's been in matches where he's kicked out of crazy stuff. But the stuff that's been done to him, it's like, dude, realistically, because of how small you are and what just happened to you, you should be down. That should be it. So it's hard to watch a lot of wrestling matches now because no stories being told in the ring. There's no ring psychology. I was watching a match yesterday of Farouk versus Crush. And it was on Monday Night Raw, Nation of Domination versus DOA. And that match was really good. It was legit really good. And I was like, man, it's like all of the stuff that I was seeing, the way that the guys were moving around the ring, their ring presence, everything was just so much better. Then it started making me think like, man, I can watch this old stuff so easy. And I've seen it all before. I can watch it so easy. And I can barely watch or stomach anything that happens in current day wrestling. Yes, are there some storylines that work? Absolutely. Absolutely, there's certain storylines that work, but they're very far and few in between. But they work. Some of them work, some of them don't. And when they work, it's awesome. When they work, it's good. But when they don't work, which is most of the time, it just don't work for me. So I guess I'm trying to say is like, look, man, I'm always be a wrestling fan, and you know, I collect. I don't know. I collect the old school. I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. I need to end this video soon, but um, I collect wrestling action figures, and it's all the old school stuff, and I'm gonna continue to do that. That's not gonna stop until it stops. um, this channel will always have a focus on wrestling video games of all kinds, um, wrestling action figures of all kinds, no matter what brand I start to collect and all this other stuff. Like it's always going to be that way. It's always going to be that way with me. Um, it's always going to be that way with me. But I don't know, man. I don't know, guys. I know. Some of you probably don't even watch an ounce of what's going on currently in wrestling, but I know that me, I guess I'm getting there like how I got there with basketball. I'm getting there, man. I really am. I'm getting there. Um, Wrestling used to excite me, right? It had surprises. It had twists and turns. It wasn't afraid. It would never played it safe. Week to week, you never knew what was going to happen. And now we have these dirt sheets where they spoil everything. We know who's going to show up on Raw. We know who's going to show up on AEW TV. We know what contract they signed and all of this other stuff. We know so much about the business. And then at the same time, the business doesn't care about suspending our disbelief anymore, because wrestling to them now is just a sport. Wrestling is boxing. Wrestling is UFC. So it doesn't matter. Can you imagine if movies were made like that and TV shows were made like that? Oh, they know that Henry Cavill's not Superman. So, hey, Cavill, don't even really act. Just kind of do your own thing. You don't even have to act like Superman or anything like that. Just you don't even have to put the costume on. Honestly, that's how they treat us as wrestling fans now. We know so much. And from week to week, on the majority of the time, week to week, does Raw ever end? Because they always usually upload that last clip how Raw ends with the main event or with the last thing that was shown. It's usually just somebody won or somebody lost. Maybe somebody got attacked, but it's just not the same. It's not the same. There's nothing that draws you in to say, man, next week is going to be really good because of the way that ended. And that's what every good TV show should do. My wife and I will sit and binge watch a show on Netflix. We'll watch Cobra Kai or something like that, right? And, you know, we'll say to ourselves, all right, let's just watch this one episode. And then that one episode ends where it's like, oh, man, we got to find out. So then what you do? Click on to that next episode, so on and so forth. You know, I know I'm not alone in this. I know all you guys do that too. But realistically, how many times is WWE or AEW giving that effect? Now, once in a while they do. But remember, this used to be a weekly thing in wrestling before. You were always excited and wondering what the hell was going to happen next. Always. Always wondering what was going to happen next. And now, nope. Nope. It's boring, unenthused booking, creative is lacking. I don't know, man. This video's going on long enough, man. I know. I had a lot of pauses. I was like losing train of thought. I was trying to figure out where I was gonna go with this. But these are just my thoughts, man. And pretty soon, and it's happened before. I did have a stretch of time. It was during the PG era. I stopped watching wrestling for a long time. It was a long time, man. Like, it was like around the time I think when the Usos like first showed up. I didn't watch wrestling at all. I wasn't looking at any highlights of anything. I just stopped. And then like a little bit later I got back into it. So I don't know, man. But this your boy Soul Drum 86. Let me know what you guys feel in the comments, man. I know this video was long, and if you lasted all this way, you know I appreciate you. But man, I just had to talk about this, man. But you know, it's your boy Soul Drum 86, and I'm out. Peace.